and go through the slideshow here. We call this Lunch and Learn. So I have a couple slides with text, but we're not going to do a lot of text. So I'm just going to kind of speed read this and get on to the pictures portion. But most seed companies do offer good information right on the outside of the packet or with botanical interests on the inside of the packet. And learn to read and understand those things before you get out in the garden. Don't just head out there and, oh, what am I going to do? How deep do I plant this? Does it need light? Does it need shade? So familiarize yourself with that seed's requirements. And that's perfect to do right now because it's not a great time to go plant in your garden right now. If you could even find some soil, it's going to be awfully icy. Okay. There we go. There's our buddy Renee. We'll be talking to her Friday at our noontime garden chatter. This was pre-COVID, so we are closer than 6 feet. And this was a couple years ago. But one of my favorite sites, and we'll talk more about that on Friday. But lots of information there for you. reneesgarden.com. Okay, and there's one of her seed packets, and that's what we're talking about today. So you've got on the front, kind of decorative, and then some information on the back. A lot of times there's a little flap over that paragraph where it says start seeds outdoors. This would what we call direct sowing outdoors into the garden. Can't do that right now. There's sometimes a little flap that opens up with extra information. So one of the words there you may not be familiar with, and I knew the word, but I didn't really know what it was. But mesclun is a Provençal word, which is an area of France. It describes a mix of tender greens, and that's all. It's just a mix of, could be anything now. There were some specific things before, but it's kind of adapted now. So baby spinach, collard greens, kale, dandelion greens, frisée, which is an endive. All kinds of things can be in there. So lots of times you can see that at the store under spring mix. And one of the ones listed there was Mosh too, which I remember when Elliot Coleman was up here for a talk he gave for the Botanical Garden, he was really kind of promoting the Mosh, which is corn lettuce or lamb's lettuce, they call it. The mayonnaise of salad greens dressed in toasted walnut oil and a dash of good sherry vinegar, Renee suggests. And boy, it's super easy to grow. That is a plant that we should be growing here in Alaska. If you've saved any seeds, they're probably okay. Some seeds don't last too well, but you can do a little germination test, and we'll look at that coming up here. Don't plant the whole seed packet. I always say start small, inch by inch, and you don't need 50 tomato plants. So Renee will actually show you on her seed packets. For instance, here's cut and come again lettuce from Renee, if I do this right. And there are 2,400 seeds in this packet. You don't need 5 packets of that, and that's plenty and enough to share too. So take it easy. All right, here's that germination test, pretty easy to do. You can find this, something similar to this on the Cooperative Extension site also, but this is the simplified version. Just a paper towel, your old seeds, put 10 of them on the paper towel, roll them up, put them in a little snack bag or sandwich bag, keep them in a warm place, and check them daily. After a couple, 3 days, they should sprout. This batch here sprouted 9 out of 10, so that's a 90% germination rate. You can plant the sprouted seeds, but that is a good seed packet. If you have less than 5 seeds sprouting, 50% under that, I would probably buy new seeds, but most seeds are good for a number of years. You can share a packet with a friend, or you can grow extra for the food bank, or our Plant a Row for the Hungry, which was started by Jeff Lowenfels here. That's at thegardenwriters.org, Plant a Row. And we have a thing that's starting up in Anchorage with the Alaska Master Gardeners about people starting extra starts for sharing. So we'll find out more about that and let you know a little bit more about that. I think it's I'm not sure what is going on with that yet, but it's in its beginning stages, kind of like a victory garden thing. So seed catalogs will tell you to count backwards from your last frost date to plant the plant appropriately. The best one I've seen is a seed calculator. Look under johnnyseeds.com, and it's pretty easy to find. There's Gardener's Library there, and it's under interactive tools there. And plug in our last frost date. It was for many, many years, May 31st, and you'll have to put 2020 in there too on this calculator. It's a seed calculator, and it'll automatically plug in the time that will take to when you should plant your seeds and when they can go outside. Of course, we can't guarantee what the weather's going to be like, but that's a great place to begin. And really, it's about time to start just about everything right now. And our friend Mr. Lowenfels will tell you that weekly in his column too. All right, so one of the first things you'll see on a seed packet is location, sun or shade. If it's sunny, most plants, we say generally for plants that need sun, 6 hours of daylight. I've toured a lot of other gardens in a lot of other states, and many places down south plant for shade. So they have very restful benches and shady areas in their yard, but I think in Alaska we do it the opposite. We want that sun. It's such a short time that we garden that we need that. So if you are starting seeds indoors, you want to go about 12 to 16 hours a day. A sunny windowsill might work. We're getting over 13 hours of daylight now. It hasn't been real sunny today. You can probably get away with it, and might have a picture here of how seeds, we call it getting leggy. They just stretch for the light. It's called phototropism. Photo meaning light, tropism is movement. So those seeds are going to stretch out for the light. So if you have a real sunny south-facing window, that might work for you. But the best thing early in the season, like in January and on, is to have a light setup. And we can explore that a little bit more too. So here's the setup we have at our schools. We have 10 Title I schools with this 21st century program. These are the Costco rolling, I call them a baker's rack shelves. If you're going to get into something like this, you want to get the ones with the bigger wheels. We've been doing this for, I think this is our 6th year, and the shelves have held up great. They've done well for us. We have the really useful containers from Office Depot, Office Max. The 17-liter size is my favorite. We drill holes in the bottom and put the lid on the bottom to catch the water that must drain out. And we are growing in soil. And then we've got the lighting system, where they're just shop lights, but you can see the big reflector hood on the lights there. I'm kind of leaning in and having a bite there. But the reflector hood makes that light go down. We also have T5 bulbs in these, a red and a blue spectrum. And we've got this all set up with Brown's Electric, and we can actually probably post the specs for that, or if it's something that you want to rig up for next year even, that would definitely work for you. The ones on the right are the LEDs we had in a classroom. I didn't suggest that they buy those lights. We could not have them on during the day when kids were in the room. It's kind of like eye-searing light. You couldn't look at it. It was very distracting and kind of annoying. So the school that has those, I put them on a timer for nighttime. So I'd probably stay with the regular fluorescents and the shop lights rather than getting into some of the other things, but it's definitely worth exploring. All right, planting depth is another thing that's going to be very important. The general rule is planting seeds twice their size. Some seeds do need light to germinate though. And there's a great book, the Seed Starter's Handbook, Nancy Bubell, for great information. And it will tell you which ones need light. And your seed packet will say that too. That's why we're doing this today, how to read a seed packet. That's important. If they're smaller seeds, they're barely covered. If they're bigger seeds, they might be as much as an inch deep. I planted corn with my granddaughters the other day because that's what they picked out. And that's about an inch deep. And you know how big a corn seed is. So we planted those deep just to see something green. So having fun with that. So yeah, don't bury them too deeply. The other thing is once you sow the seeds or plant them individually in little packs, 4-packs, or the trays that have a number of little cells in them, you want to have good seed to soil contact. So you want to press those seeds down a little bit after you cover them. Make sure that they stay moist while they're germinating. That's very important. So don't plant them too deep. Seed spacing will definitely come up on your seed packet. And in the picture, it's actually the thing that relates to square foot gardening. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here. Each of the colored circles on there are set up for Mel Bartholomew's square foot gardening technique. I designed something like this myself. I just put sheet metal screws on a 12 by 12 piece of plywood with a handle, poke it into moist soil, and I've got about 1.5 inch spacing, so I can put 16 little seeds right into a perfectly spaced garden plot or container, and that works pretty well. So this is a pretty cool little deal. After I invented mine, they showed up on Pinterest all over the place, and I don't know if I was first, but I definitely thought of that idea. But you know, we like gimmicks, us guys especially, so I haven't bought one of these yet. Pretty tempted. So you can find these online. So seed spacing, very important though. The classic thing a lot of people do is make a furrow for carrots. With your finger, make a little furrow, dump the whole seed packet in. Don't do that. Use about 1 inch spacing. You'll save time, money, seeds, and effort, and the carrots won't be kind of warped out. When they're too close together, they get funny, and if you try and transplant them, they get really weird. If you want to grow weird vegetables, transplant your carrots, but don't do that. All right, spacing. So here's a bit on square foot gardening, which is really the ultimate setup in spacing. I'm a big fan of this type of gardening. Mel Bartholomew was an engineer who retired and had to come up with something to fill his time. And so he came up with this. And notice the white grid on the left-hand picture. He says if you don't have the grid, it's not square foot gardening. So be that as it may, it does help you organize that. And that little tool that we just looked at would work for each one. So each square foot has a designated plan for how many seeds would be in there. So if it's a bigger plant, and there might be 4, there might be 3, there might be 1 if it's a big plant. Carrots would be 16 in a square foot, 4 by 4 by 4 by 4. And so it's a great method, I think. It's efficient. Again, it saves time, money, seeds, and effort, and it looks nice. Okay, and this is these are our square foot beds at the Alaska Botanical Garden up in our outdoor classroom space. This is early spring, a couple years ago. So I first made these freestanding, and you'll see the 4 by 4 area, but I added the sides are now 5 by 4. So there's a trough, a 1 by 4 trough. So when they were freestanding, we had some 2 by 2s up with netting on it. But then we just pushed them up against the fence. And so we used the 1 by 4 trough to grow our vertical things, or peas and beans can climb up there. Plant some other vines in there would be great. Peas do very well for us, and everybody should be planting those. So the main part of the box, the big part, is 4 by 4, which is 16 square feet. As you saw on the square foot gardening, each square foot can be planted according to the principles in the book or all the information you can find online. So again, I favor this kind of method. And you can adapt and do it loosely too. Sometimes we do it that way, and sometimes we just plant rows and things, and taller plants in the back, of course, shorter plants in the front. So waiting for these to thaw out for this year. You can also use some kind of screening or netting or plastic and make a little hoop house out of these, or just cover them to to with black plastic to help warm them up. So I haven't been out to the garden for a while, but I need to go out there and see what condition these are in and get ready for summer. So square foot gardening, pretty efficient and fun method. Okay. Here's the original plan for these. Again, I added that 1x4 trough with those uprights there. It works well. The only thing with the uprights, we used the smaller bird netting. I felt really bad one year. We caught a little bird in there who died. He was trapped, so I felt so bad about that. The only thing I would use for bird netting would be I think it's like a 5-inch square of a nylon, kind of shiny nylon string that's a netting with much larger holes. The plants will be just as happy and you won't hurt any wildlife. I just felt so bad about that. So we can share this design too if you'd like, but you can come out to the garden and check them out. Here's a little bit more on the spacing for square foot gardening. There's a site called Plant and Plate that kind of gives you a Reader's Digest version of this too. So you can see one big broccoli and one in one square. You get down to onions, you've got 4x4 radish that way, carrots are that way too. Marigolds could be, you could probably put more in there. So you get the idea. Works pretty well, very efficient. Okay. So number of days to germination. That means when the seeds will wake up at the expected date. Again, kind of hard to say. It depends on conditions. One thing that you can do to your seeds to germinate them is to have a heat mat, but you have to monitor that because I've let the heat mat go on too long and dried out seeds and killed the seeds by not having it on a timer. So that might not be the best thing if you don't have time to really check that every day. So the germinating means though that the seeds are going to start to wake up. So while they're germinating, you have to keep that soil moist. If they dry out before they sprout, then they're not going to do too well. Later on, your seedlings and your baby plants can actually dry out and wilt a little bit and they'll still come back, but you don't want to do that to your seeds. So our pal Ed Hume suggests some possibilities for poor germination: seeding too deeply, planting in cold soil, extremes of watering, improper soil preparation, birds or squirrels, and poor seeds are the most common causes for germination failure. For us, I have a greenhouse and some mice got into the pots my wife had planted and they ate the seeds. That's never happened before. They were squash and cucumber seeds, so they were nice big fat seeds, and I don't know how those mice got up on these shelves that we have, but anyway, had to replant those. So keep an eye on that. If they don't come up, and there's Ed right there. I was down visiting his garden. Super nice guy, lots of information. He's got a book, of course, too. If they don't come up after about a week or so after the designated germination time, you might want to replant them. It's an approximate date, but it's pretty reliable. All right, so that's what germination is. It just means they're sprouting, they're coming alive. Looks like maybe some asparagus coming up there. And I threw in this classic bean seed drawing because that's what you're first going to see, is that bean sprout coming up and curling up, and then those seed leaves coming out. And the first leaves you see, we do call the seed leaves. They're really not true leaves yet. Those will not look like the plant. The true leaves are the second set of leaves that come out. The other thing is, on this drawing, I like to have chopsticks handy in the greenhouse. If I was, as the English say, pricking out the seedling here on the big one on the right, usually we say when it has its second set of leaves, it's time to transplant. But I would use the chopsticks to go underneath the soil carefully, and I would latch onto with my fingers gently the larger leaves and then ease that plant out of the soil. So don't grab the stem. If you crush the stem, that's the elevator and the plant will die. But if you damage a leaf, it can grow another leaf. So that's pretty easy to do. One thing again on botanical interests is they have a drawing of what the seedling looks like, because a lot of baby plants kind of look the same. They're mostly going to be dicots. So number of days to harvest is an approximate number also, just giving you suggestions. That Johnny Seed calculator, though, will also help you with that. So it's a good thing to look up. So height of plant is another thing that maybe you planted something and it got way too big in the front of your garden and it's blocking all the light from the back of the garden. So it's an approximate number, depends on conditions and fertilizer and different things. So on the containers on the right, if you can see them from many views, I would put tall plants in the middle, smaller plants around the side, and that's actually the theme for another lunch and learn is, I call it Contain Yourself. It's about container planting. And the garden on the left, you would put the shorter plants in the front, taller plants in the back or the middle, depending on your view of the garden too. So for our school programs, we can't grow anything really too tall. So another thing will be on your seed packet, start indoors or plant directly to the garden. For us, I think many things, maybe even if not generally suggested to start indoors, we do anyway, because it's such a short season. We want to get things out. Last year I was in Japan in April, never leave Alaska in April. That's seed starting time. So this year I'm on it a little bit more. So many seeds can be planted indoors, and of course you need to have them hardened off. Nothing can go outside right now. The sun, the wind is hard on them. So don't plan on doing that for a while. And then we'll talk a little bit more coming up here about direct sowing. So again, on your seed packet, it's going to tell you that, and even if it doesn't say if it should be started indoors, it'll say starting indoors 4 weeks before your last frost date. So there's that language you're going to run into. But we'll talk about direct sowing here in just a second and learn a little bit more about that. Okay, so starting seeds indoors really would be best with the lighting system we looked at. They give good strong stems. I've got our greenhouse out here. It's a 16 by 20 heated greenhouse. And I do have some lights on a timer for the seedlings because I want them to be nice and strong and not get all stretched out like 3 or 4 inches tall and flopping over. We've all done that. And that's the best way I learned is to do it wrong. I don't know if that's a guy thing or if that's just me, but that's how I know something should be done differently because I did it wrong. So I do like the lights for starting seeds. There's abundant light today, but you can't always count on that. So light should be about 4 inches from the tops of your seedlings. The heat mat's a good idea if you're careful with that. A tip I picked up from another garden friend is to put a layer of plywood over the heat mat so there's a barrier between the seed flats, and it will distribute the warmth a little bit more and also tone it down a little bit, but then also having them on a timer is a good idea. So your phrase that you want to keep in mind, start warm and grow cool, and give the seeds a warm start, but then let them slow down and develop thicker stems and stronger leaves by having a cooler area to grow. So that's start warm and grow cool. That's a good phrase to keep in mind. So indoor seed starting, lots of ways to do it. The one on the right is Nunaka Valley, and you can see our system works pretty well. So we grow with some greens, different types of lettuces and kale and some herbs, and then we generally make a salad, or we've done pesto, we've done salsa, we've done smoothies. Salad is pretty common, made our own salad dressing. We got a whole program and nutrition goes along with that. But if you want to be a food grower, it's really pretty easy. You definitely would need lights for that. The setup on the left is the Grow Ease system, and it's not a paid endorsement here. I don't have anything coming in from gardener supply company. But I love this setup. We'll have a picture to show you a little bit more in detail what it is, but it's a nice heavy duty little tray. And there's another insert tray for the seeds in the soil. And they're sitting on top of a capillary mat, which goes down in water. And you know, when you get a pizza, that little table thing, it could be like a Barbie table or something that's in the middle of the pizza box. It's sort of like that. It's on legs, so they're not sitting in water, but the roots seek the water that's coming up from the seed mat, and the cells on this setup are pretty deep. So you develop really nice roots that go down where they're supposed to grow, and that comes with a grow dome too. It's a nice little setup. There should be another picture coming up here. It's one of my favorite systems. And another thing, easy to do, and we've got a seed starting workshop on our virtual setup next Tuesday. I'll be doing that. And I'm definitely going to talk about the recycled materials at Renee's Garden too. We'll talk about that Friday. Has a nice section on using recycled materials. So the berry containers are great for even outdoor sowing because they will drip. If you're doing it indoors, you might want to stick them in a seed flat with no holes so they don't drip all over everything. And one of my favorite things is that Swiffer, that wet Swiffer thing. That's a great box. It's got a clear lid once you finish with it, and take the little foil lining off, rinse it out, air it out for a couple days maybe, make sure there's no soap left. And it's got a clear plastic lid. You can poke a couple holes in the bottom for drainage, probably not a bad idea, or not, just don't overwater the container. Once your seeds sprout, take the lid off and you can put it underneath. That's a free thing, and it's exactly what a seed flat that you purchase is. It's got the lid on it and the container. So check out the Renee's site for that one. Pretty easy to find that. So here's direct sowing. Just follow the packet directions. Generally, again, most seeds need to be about 1 inch apart. I love the way they look in this picture because they're not too close and you won't have to thin anything. It's like with your carrots, when you dump in the whole package, you're supposed to, or put 2 seeds in a cell if you're starting indoors. Then you're supposed to cut out the weak one. I can't do it. I just can't do it. So I just plant 1 in each cell. If they don't come up, that's fine. I plant plenty. Yeah, I don't like to have to thin the plants by cutting them out. So use some good spacing. On the direct sowing, there are certain ones that need to be outdoors, and one of the first ones would be peas as soon as your soil is workable. And how do you know that? You reach down when it's not frozen, it'll be a while, get a handful of soil. If you can squeeze it and only get a couple drops of water out of it, then it's probably ready. It might be a little cool, but a lot of those direct sown plants and seeds, they don't care. So there's a list coming up on the next slide, which ones to do. So this is after the last frost date. Again, traditionally for us, it's been May 31st. There's no way to really know that. We've had snow on that date before, but it could be 70 degrees too, we don't know. So things to direct seed: the beans, beets, carrots, peas, radishes, spinach, and turnips. From a list I found somewhere, I took out the melon, zucchini, and squash. They're harder to grow in our cool climate, and start them indoors or by transplants. Although last summer we were able to get tomatoes to ripen outdoors. You know, it's just that kind of summer. So we'll see. So direct sowing from the Cooperative Extension, the recommended variety list for South Central Alaska. It's under their publications on their website, easy to find, HGA 00031. And it suggests that many fruits and vegetables grow in our gardens, such as potatoes, carrots, and cabbage. The warm season ones are more difficult to grow. Not that you shouldn't try. So go to uaf.edu/CES for Cooperative Extension Service. I know it says UAF, but we have an office in Anchorage at the library, which is not open right now. But tons of information online there. That's your first line of defense too. That's U.S. Department of Agriculture, our first line of defense for things that we're growing or trying to grow and do, and lots of help over there. So benefits of direct seeding from Johnny Seeds. If you plant them right in the ground, you're not disturbing the root system by transplanting, so there'll be no shock. Plants avoid being root bound, because that will happen if you don't transplant your little plugs into something larger. And also a lot fewer materials than required in transplanting. So I'm planting a lot of stuff in little cells, that like 72 cell thing, like the Jiffy setup that you can buy. It's a seed flat with the cells, and you can also buy just the four pack cells. But fill up that pack, and it's got the clear plastic grow dome over the top, and those work pretty well. They are going to require transplanting later, and I'm just going to have to deal with that, and my greenhouse is going to be overflowing, but I've started a bunch of seeds. What else are you going to do? A lot of it is flowers too. We do some veggies, but I'll start those later. Here's another great resource for you. That's okay. Go ahead. Yeah, that's Stacy back in the virtual world of doing the engineering. So this is my friend Amy Andrikowitz. She had a site with some other ladies called the Savvy Gardeners, and Amy's broken off to herself. So Get Busy Gardening is her site, and she's got a book out, and a great site, real easy to follow. She lives in Minnesota too, so she's dealing with what we're dealing with. So I like people like that kind of understand us a little bit more. So this link here was the easiest seeds to direct sow, and she's got one on which the easiest ones like annuals to do. So good place to go. Get Busy Gardening. Check it out. So other terms that may be on your seed packet: annuals means you have to plant them annually every year. Coming back, they just grow in one season, and they'll die down, like your peonies and zinnias and marigolds and all those kind of things. Perennials means they come back over and over and over. So a lot of times in baseball, you hear the perennial slugger, somebody that's good every year, it comes back every year. So now perennial means it dies back to the ground. The leaves are dead, the roots are under the ground. Just had a question pop up there in the chat, and that was cool, about a handout. I think we can arrange something like that. I'll definitely have one for next Tuesday, and I think we can come up with something that won't be the whole slideshow, but it'll be some of the basic information. But good idea to take a screenshot, or even with your phone, just photograph the slide that you like. So a biennial is a plant that takes 2 years to grow through its season. The first year, like foxgloves, will grow a small group of leaves, and the second year it will bloom. So those are kind of a pain, I think. Says, who can wait? we want lots of color right in our face. That's why we do hanging baskets. We can have color right in our face there. So that was some information from Aggie Horticulture at Texas A&M. So a lot of these sites are fun just to explore. So here, Renee's packet up close, cut and come again. So we'll talk about that with her Friday in there. She's got a great little video on that too. That you can, okay, I'm having visitors. So our guard dog, the mighty Jack the Chihuahua, is taking care of them. Cut and come again means that you can trim them and have them for dinner, and you cut them off at about 1 inch above the plant, and they'll grow back. So we can explore that a little bit more on Friday. We'll go through that. Okay. So growing notes. This is actually right from her seed packet. Just information on everything that's on the seed packet. So we can kind of whiz through this. Here's the growing notes. Starting seeds outdoors, and this would be for your lettuce and things. You can do those easily in containers and on your deck. I love the, I can't remember what they call them, but it's a thing that fits over your deck railing. It's a window box, and it's got like an area that kind of just laps over your deck railing. It's not going to blow off because it's well anchored there. So we do a lot of lettuces and kales and things right outside on the deck. So there's that information again. Keep seed beds evenly moist. So harvest and use, again, these are all tabs right from the seed packet. So you can see there's lots of information on there. It would be worth having a journal, maybe to keep the seed packets, or definitely keep some notes for yourself, see what did well, what you did, what the weather was like. Always kind of fun to look over that. Also on the packet, there would be another tab. That's exactly what you see on the packet. So what we've just been talking about. So plant in the months when you should plant it. And then she's talking also about a fall planting. You could do a second planting of these guys, whether they're sun or shade, the planting depth, the spacing of the seeds, days to germination, and days to harvest. It's all those things we just talked about. So again, if it's 7 to 14 days, if it doesn't come up in 21 days, then you probably didn't have good seeds. So just pay attention to what's on the packet. So this might be a small picture for you. Just one of her collections that she has. And I like Renee because there's great information, but also she supports our programs too. She makes donations to our program. So, and I've been using her stuff personally for many years, but this is a container kitchen garden setup. I think this is a great way for people to grow and go, because you don't have to commit yourself to some big plot in the yard that you're going to dig up, and you can have things close at hand. You can move them around as the sun moves quickly for our summer. You might have to move them into a sunnier spot. So the container kitchen garden, just spend some time online and look some of these things up and think if that's something that you might buy, or you can put your own collection together. She's got a lot of container veggies. Here's another container herb garden, another little setup here. Fun things to grow. It looks so nice there. And again, you can move that stuff around. It's fun having the herbs handy, because if your access to your kitchen is easy, you can go clip fresh herbs, which may be a little more tasteful than dried herbs. So you use less when you're cooking, but maybe just some aromatherapy. Just go rub that pot and just, oh man, that's good stuff, like some basil. So in conclusion, buy only what you need. Again, some of those packets have 1,000 seeds in it. Most of Renee's tomatoes are 50 in there. You don't need 50 tomato plants. Share a packet with a friend. Jeff Lowenfels has suggested maybe we use those little libraries and drop extra seed packets off there. So maybe that'll be a thing in these times to adapt to. Plant a row for the hungry, and you can grow some extra for folks who don't have enough. Labels and variety and date, and that's something you can do now. You can prepare your labels ahead of time. Keep a journal, it's great, you can do that. And key for me, grow what you like. I'm not a big turnip guy, so I'm not gonna grow them. Grow what you like and have fun. In these days, I think this is gonna be a huge skill to have. I think we'll see a kind of a boost in this and an interest in this, and something that we should be doing anyway. When the boats stop coming, we need to be able to grow our own food. So get yourself some seeds. You can order online. There's the nurseries are open. I was just at Bell's and Diamond Greenhouse, nobody there. So you make the decision if you're gonna go out, but they have seeds and you can get them online too. Here's a question from Lacey. If your seeds are stored outside, if they freeze, are they still good? Freezing is probably not as bad as drying out and being in like a hot shed like this summer. It was hot, we have to say it. So they're probably okay, Lacey. And you could do that germination test that we talked about too. 10 seeds in a wet paper towel and a Ziploc. That's what I would do. Looks like a couple more chats. I don't know, Stacy, if you're going to work your magic or if I just press chats. So a couple things coming up. April 7th, beautiful blooming bulbs, and then Garden Art Weekly little program we're doing now. That's all these are free educational opportunities for you. This Friday, Garden Chatter with Renee Shepard. And so we're just trying to bring you something to keep us all sane and have a little bit of fun with it too.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Pat. So we'll stay on for a few more minutes if anybody has questions, but thanks for joining us, and let us know too if something on this didn't work. Zoom is starting to change things to make the Zoom sessions a little more private. So if you joined us and got put into a waiting room and had to wait a little bit, I do have to now manually admit everyone who comes. So if people showed up a little late, I apologize if I wasn't right on the slides. You have to click that. So managing a few things at once, but we'll get the hang of it. So looks like we have another question from Mason. If you want to read that one, Pat.
Yeah, it just went away, but I think I got it. You planted some lettuce already in your heated greenhouse. You know, they do warm up pretty well during the day, even if it's a solar greenhouse, but you got to keep that heat in at night, and that's the tricky part. But yeah, you definitely can plant some lettuce and things right now. Do some Renee's cut and come again.
Yeah,
hey,
so
thank you, Robin.
His question exactly was, they had planted mixed lettuce seeds in a heated greenhouse about 4 or 5 days ago, and they already have sprouts. So they're wondering, is it possible that the lettuce is actually coming up, or do they think it's weeds?
Well, if you use fresh soil from a bag, it probably is the lettuce. If you use recycled soil, which I do a lot, not in my seedlings, but our outdoor containers, you may be getting some chickweed in there. We always get chickweed, but that's where that Botanical Interests seed packet will show you what it looks like. Most things that come up are going to be little dicots, are going to be little Mickey Mouse ears that come up until the next leaves come out. You're really not sure. So you give them a little time to grow. I bet they're lettuce. I hope they are. More?
So they want to know, are the links to the upcoming sessions for our Lunch and Learn? We don't have those links up yet. I will be working on that this week to get those up, but the links to our Beautiful Bloomin' Bulbs, which is happening tomorrow, that is already up on our website. That's been up for a while. And then our Garden Chatter with Renee Shepherd is also up on our website. So right now I'm able to kind of get things set up a week in advance. I will try to do that a little more as we get things set. We're on a learning curve here as well, so thanks for your patience.